No nonsense know-how here. 2004 Toyota Tundra with 192K on it. And today's a quick little review video talking about these Rancho RS9000XL front struts I put on about 30,000 miles ago. We're at 192K now, and you can see I put those on at 161K back in 2016, so it's been just over 4 years. I'll say I'm not trying to tear these things up. I mean, overall they've been great. They're not leaking. I like the way they handle, but there's a couple things you should know if you're going to buy these, and a couple things that could use improvement. Now, prior to putting these on my truck, I had the original struts on there, and they weren't leaking. They still worked completely fine. They were starting to settle a little bit, so that the front was sitting pretty low, and this lower bushing, well, I guess it was looking kind of like this one, compressed up, but not quite torn like you see here. So off the rip, my main complaint is going to be that after 30,000 miles, you can see the spring really rusted up quite a bit. I don't know if they used powder coating on this or what there is. And obviously the biggest complaint is that the lower bushings on these are clearly under designed or just crummy rubber or something, because this completely tore all the way through. And I've just put some new ones on, and they're starting to do the same darn thing, but you can see the other side wasn't quite as bad. But this rubber, I think they need to upgrade this design, because whatever they're using in here, at least for the Tundras, it's just not strong enough. It's compressing and then tearing. The cool thing is I showed some pictures of this to the place that I bought them, and they warrantied them out no problem. The next thing I want to talk about is the adjustment knobs. What I like is they're very easy to remove and replace. They just have two 3mm Allen heads on them, and so you can spin those out and pop them right off. No leakage or nothing like that. Scratch that. These are standard screws, 1/8 hex. A 3mm would work, but you're much more likely to round them out. And they're pretty cheap. You can get them anywhere from like $6 to $14. I'll plug a link to them down below, the part number. But what I don't like is when they put these on from the factory, I think they should start packing this full of grease, because you can see this gets just all rusted up inside of there, and the piston doesn't work anymore. It's seized in there. So my recommendation is, when you get these new, and by the way, there's a gasket that goes in between them also, but when you get them new, take it off and pack this full of like Bel-Ray waterproof grease, or any grease at all. Marine grease is nice, because it's a little bit more or less likely to get washed away from water. But that way, I mean, really, it's kind of a maintenance item. You should check these every maybe year or two to lubricate them and make sure that they're not rusting up inside of there. The way this works is it has a little plunger in there with threads, and as you spin it, that will come out. So it's not a super robust design, and they break pretty easy. You can see this one has come apart, and it's not actually broken. That's how it goes together. So it has this little D fitting in there, and you can actually put that back in. So here's the new ones, and you can see I broke this knob when I was putting them in. Being careless, I guess, but luckily, again, easy to replace. And something else you gotta look for when you're putting these in, the chromoly tube inside of here. When I was looking at mine, there was actually paint on it. It looks like they spray these with powder coating, if I was to guess, and there was powder coat paint all over that, and I had to scrape it off with something plastic to make sure not to scratch the chrome. But if you leave that on there, it would not be good, as it's would be pressing down into the seals and probably tear those seals or wear them out, or cause them to start leaking prematurely. Another thing I did is kind of hose them down with some fluid film, just to hopefully prevent the rust. It's still gonna rust either way. But anyway, I gotta put this new one in, and the last thing I gotta say is, you see these bushings? I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but they are already compressing. You see over on the other side, if I can get my camera in there, it's already starting to bulge out. So these bushings are junk, and Rancho, you really got to upgrade those, at least for the Tundra. On the shocks, this isn't a problem, because they're not bearing the weight of the vehicle. The springs are holding it up. So those bushings are holding up fine, but you can see I popped the adjustment off, and this one looks to be just rusted solid. So I'm going to hit that with some rust penetrant and hopefully free it up and grease that up. But again, if I had done that when I first got these, or did some maintenance on them, then that wouldn't have been that bad at this point. Well, this rear one was seized solid. After hitting it with some rust penetrant and a hammer and a punch, I was able to get that to start moving again freely. So you'll want to hit this with a wire brush, clean all that rust off, and then grease her up. This is what a new one will look like. I recommend coating this in grease or even oil and pushing in and out a few times. Maybe even take some drops of motor oil and soak them inside of this thing too. Keep that moving free, even though it's plastic. But there you go. Tell me if that's not overkill or not. I filled it and then plunged it in and out a bunch of times, and I'm gonna go with that. Now make sure that you put the plunger, retract it all the way in before you go bolting this on too. Now these do cause your truck to sit a little bit higher in the front, and that's gonna settle down quite a bit. You see in the back, that's where we're sitting, and after 30,000 miles, I wanna say this dropped probably a good 1.5 to 2 inches down. It was much more sitting like down here. I should have taken some before pictures, but they will settle quite a bit. And that's all I got. If they didn't warranty them out for me, I think it'd be a pretty negative review for only 30,000 miles, especially considering I got 160K out of the original ones, and there was no problems at all with them. Although these did never leak, so that's cool. If they were leaking at 30,000 miles, which I've seen with some aftermarket ones, that would be no good. They do say they're made in USA right on them, on the strut tubes, but I have a feeling the components like the bushings are probably made in China. Comment down below if you know the answer to that though. That'd be cool. And yeah, so since they warranted them out, I'm pretty happy with the product. I just think they hopefully need to see this video and upgrade the bushing on their struts, because the struts load bearing, and clearly what they're using in there is just not strong enough, which I've already said like 5 times in this video probably. Anyway, so if the video was helpful or informative, consider dropping a thumbs up or a comment. If you have any feedback, leave that below. Anything I failed to mention, feel free. And if you had a similar experience or anything to add, of course, that'd be awesome. So anyway, I'm gonna grease these up, clean them up, and get back to work here. So no nonsense, no how. I hope to see you again. Goodbye.